The Hidden Hindu, Book 2 of the trilogy by Akshat Gupta, Chapter 3, Nanshaad, Part 2. As was his nature, Premal had been wondering what the link between Nagrendra and Milrepa could be. There was no historical account of it. He was well aware that he couldn't ask him about Milrepa directly, so he decided to disguise the query as a question about the crescent moon. Therefore, he began drafting the query in his head. The crescent moon night was coming closer, hence the time was indeed right to ask that question at least. Maybe that could give him a way to pry out some answers about Milrepa too. A confused LSD watched Premal walking more briskly towards Nagrendra. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You will get the answer when the time is right." Premal glanced back triumphantly as he closed the distance between Nagrendra and himself. He reached right behind Nagrendra and said, "You don't trust us, right?" Nagrendra continued to walk while he replied, "That's not true." Premal was positive that he had sparked a conversation that might get him some answers, and so he continued. "LSD says you don't tell us anything because you don't trust us." Nagrendra's face betrayed no emotion as he replied, "And what is that you want to know?" Premal looked around at LSD, who was still following the protocol of keeping a distance and not questioning anything. "I want to know what Kailash Parbat has to do with the crescent moon night. She is afraid to ask you about the connection between you and the man who climbed Mount Kailash." Nagrendra halted abruptly and said, "You have 2 questions. I will answer only one of them. Decide for yourself which question is more significant to you, and I shall answer it." Mirroring Nagrendra's pause, Premal also stopped in his tracks, maintaining the distance. He thought for a moment and decided that the mystery of the crescent moon could be solved when they reached their destination. There might not be another window to ask the man about who climbed the enigmatic Kailash Parbat. So he declared, "I want the answer to her question." "Very well." Nagrendra gestured to Premal to come closer and scowled at the recollection of his nemesis. "I met Milrepa in Biskrak while building one of the oldest Dashanan shrines. He won my heart by selflessly helping me with the construction of the temple and left empty-handed after the Stahapana. But we couldn't let him leave. He didn't realize that not only his, but our work in Biskrak was also completed. He did not realize that while he was searching for a guide and a guru, we were also waiting there for the right prodigy and accomplice. Milrepa did not realize that he was not the one to find us. We found him. So the guide followed the wanderer. Yes, we tilled Milrepa for months from Biskrak to the northern boundaries of this country until we were confident that he could be reliable. Finally, when he had fully given up and was about to go beyond the border, we crossed his path again and took him under our wing. He was a good student at first. Later, he became one of our 2 best prodigies and then a second most trusted confidant, till he gave us his deepest bash of betrayal. Us? We? One of the 2 best prodigies? Second most trusted confidant? What are you talking about? Who was the first one? Did I miss something?" Premal was puzzled. Nagrendra heard all of his fresh doubts calmly and said, "I told you that I will answer only one question." Premal had no choice but to suppress the queries and let Nagrendra finish. He had a great quality of never doubting our decisions, and so he never questioned or reasoned with anything that we were doing. He gained our faith, and we taught him everything we knew until he came as zealous as me. Together we tracked Om, meticulously tracing the places where we got hints about him or suspected his presence. However, he kept changing his name, identity, and location. So I did too. But Milrepa couldn't do it because lying was a sin according to his principles of morality and ethics. So he chose to remain mum. He was so silent and submissive to our mission that he never even asked the name of the man we were chasing or why. Milrepa, the perfect accomplice. Nagrendra trailed off, reminiscing about those times. His silence was so constant that people pre-assumed he was mute, but his quietness was what we mistook as his sincere compliance to our objective. He was failing uncountable times at nabbing One day, Milrepa spoke after several years. Maybe I could serve you better if I knew who the man is and what he possesses that we want to so direly. Maybe he could indeed serve us better if he knew. He thought, thus revealing our biggest secret to Milrepa. We took him to Daragiri. Now, Regender talked about Milrepa to Primo, heading towards Mount Kailash. Up on the mountain was Milrepa talking about Nagrendra to Om. What is Degree? Milrepa looked at Om before answering. He gathered the courage to speak about this part and looked at Ashwathama, who also glanced at Om. He then signaled that Milrepa should resume his story. The Gariri is a waterfall in the Ghatshila district of Jharkhand. The whole area was flourishing with forests and hills, and I had no idea that a place so splendid could also be the site of such barbarism. Hidden behind the waterfall was a cave where, for the first time, I witnessed a man in the most dreadful physical condition a human being could ever be imagined in. I looked at him through the crack between the rocks, where he couldn't see me. He was breathing, but was neither alive nor dead. He was so skinny and disfigured that it pained me to even keep looking at him. I asked Nanshaad, "Who is he?" "He is the one who let Om escape. He is Dunyan Vardi," explained Nanshaad. Om could not believe the preposterous words he was hearing. Someone was telling him that Dunvantari had been alive for that long. At that time, I had no clue about you and your endless existence. Nanshaad narrated everything beginning from your creation till your escape when he had attacked Dunvantari and Shashruda, Om added, his emotions weighing down his voice. He had kept Dunvantari alive since then, torturing and compelling him to write the book of Mrit Sanjivani for him all over again. All these were the only two options he had in order to avoid death. Learning about Dunvantari's state was not only harrowing but also bewildering to Om. On their way to Kailash, Nagrendra re-encountered as they trudged on. I was alive, but my body was decaying from within because, unlike Om, I cannot prevent aging. Although I managed to slow the process to the extent that I was aging as much as a single day over the span of multiple years, I was falling short of time in my physical form. I shared everything with Milrepa so that he could understand the urgency of both searching for Om and getting the information out of Dunvantari. Milrepa promised that he would do everything to get the books for me. Together, we watched a plan to send Milrepa undercover into Dunvantari's chamber and as another prisoner. Inside the chamber, Milrepa pretended that he couldn't speak. To win Dunvantari's heart, he looked after him, cleaned and fed him. But Dunvantari did not utter a word. It was a subtle war of silence between the two, while Kark was my eyes and ears on their prison walls. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and soon Kark died a natural death in that dungeon, but nothing decayed between the two prisoners, neither Milrepa's dedication nor Dunvantari's silence. I eventually replaced Kark with Karup. Karup. Who was it this time? Asked Primo. My new pet, a hyena. There was one thing that they had in common: stubbornness. Nagrendra's rage was boiling as he continued to envision Milrepa, but he composed himself, curbing his frustration. Dunvantari couldn't utter a single word, and Milrepa wouldn't budge without hearing him talk. Neither of them was giving up. Ultimately, after 18 months of silence, Dunvantari spoke to Milrepa. We could not hear them talk, but at least the first barrier of communication was broken. Right then, based on the pattern of Om's travel history decoded by Milrepa, we learned that Om was last spotted in Avanti, which is known as Ujjain, and is in central India. Thus, we left Karup and to guard Dunvantari and Milrepa for a few days and headed to Avanti to check the information. So that's how Nagrendra located me in Avanti, Om realized. Milrepa replied, yes. When Nanshaad told me about the cities you were visiting back then, I figured that your migration wasn't arbitrary and observed the pattern you were traveling. You were returning to each location you had left after a certain number of years with a new name, meeting all the old people of the locality, posing as your own son, as if I was right. The next place you were journeying towards was Avanti again. I escaped that raid by a hair out of sheer luck. What happened when he came back? Asked Milripa. At the same time, Nagendra was answering the questions for Premil. When we came back, Milripa was gone. He had fled after receiving all the information from Dunvantari. I found Karup's dead body at the entrance. Karup was murdered. He cheated us. We had misunderstood him all along. He was a traitor, masquerading as an ally. He was gone, and with him, one out of the two opportunities to get to reach Sanjivani was also gone. Nagendra's words came to a halt, but his feet still moved towards their destination. So, did he kill Karup to rescue Dunvantari? Premil inquired, eager to gain clarity. Nagendra turned to look at Premil, who was approaching him to get the answer, remembering that Milripa's betrayal led to his defeat. Nagendra suddenly grabbed Premil by his throat. Premil was caught off guard and struggled to breathe. Nagendra pulled him closer to his face with a jerk and sneered, "You know, hyenas are capable of eating all sorts of animals, whether it's their own prey or a rotting corpse. From wild beasts to birds to lizards and snakes, everything. Their jaws are strong enough to crush bones, but Karup didn't eat Kark. I did." Premil began to choke. He struggled to speak despite Nagendra's death grip. "I can't breathe." LSD was a mere spectator and stood there quietly. Nagendra used his other hand to pinch Premil's tongue tightly between his thumb and index finger and said, "You couldn't be a better servant if you couldn't speak. You could be a better servant if you couldn't speak. Like Karup, but the absence of voice wouldn't allow you to tell me that you can't breathe. You wouldn't defend yourself. So, you see, everything is double-edged with a good and bad side. Even your tongue. It saves you today, but it can push you to your death tomorrow." Nagendra released Premil's neck and tongue, and he immediately fell to his knees, violently gasping for air. Nagendra crouched beside him before saying, "LSD didn't ask any of those questions. You did. Next time you lie, you die." Leaving him there, he carried on. Premil took a minute to collect his wits. LSD came up and offered her hand. He held her blurry palm to pull himself up and saw Nagendra striding ahead. Nagendra's fingers had left prominent marks on his throat. Now he knew his place as he walked with LSD again. With the last question about what happened to Dunvantari suspended in his head, "So what did Dunvantari tell you?" asked Om. "Dunvantari cried and told me that you were alone in the world and it was imperative that Parashurama knew about you as well as what you possessed. It was then that I realized the purpose of my life, which I had set out to find in the first place. It was not Nanshaad. You were my destiny lay. He was only a part of the journey. Everything that happened in my life led me to Dunvantari so that I could learn the ultimate reason for my birth. Dunvantari was the one who told me about the city of Ganj and how to reach Parashurama, which led me to the summit, that great Kailash, and attain salvation. Therefore, these books of history recognize Milripa as the only man who ever climbed Kailash Parbat. You must know that I did it for you. I reached Parashurama for you." "What about Dunvantari? Did you set him free?" asked Om. "How could I have left Dunvantari in that hell on earth? Of course I set him free. I killed him," replied Milripa with a hint of remorse. Om felt like someone had lit a fire in the pit of his stomach before he could process the information rationally. He came charging at Milripa with burning rage. Ashwatthama was quick to hold Om back, but the force was enough to knock Milripa to the ground. Understanding that Om's anger was justified, he got up calmly. Ashwatthama kept an arm around Om's shoulders to console him as he tried to compose himself. Om turned around with teary eyes and said, "The books are gone. Dunvantari died in vain. We have lost the war already before even fighting it. Now we have nothing to fight for." Ashwatthama spoke softly. "We have you. Everything that has happened so far is just the tip of the iceberg. You must know what Parashurama told me when you were lying unconscious on the rocks near the seashore on Ross Island. You will be the one who will defend us the next time we face Nagendra. Only you have the ability to remember who you were before becoming immortal. What if there is something still worth fighting for? The war doesn't end till the world exists. You can fight if there is still something worth fighting for." And what could that be? Holmes scoffed hopelessly. The question is not what's worth it. The question is, can you fight? Holmes stood answerless. Ashwatthama continued. War has only one purpose, and that's victory. The responsibility for your triumph lies in my hands. You need to be trained for the battle, and I will ensure that you are ready. Your training starts tomorrow.